wanted to take this Friday, as we like to get deep divey on Fridays, I wanted to check in with the Oklahoma City Thunder. We did our tier list earlier in the week. We both still had them in the S tier, despite this weird, 12, 15 game stretch that they were on. We're not too far removed from me personally yelling at them about defending Double Drag poorly as they got blown out by the Charlotte Hornets. But since that Hornets loss, they've won 5 straight. That is the longest active winning streak in the league right now. It's 3 straight wins against playoff/play-in teams. If you're looking at Miami, San Antonio, and Houston. And with the last 2 in particular, these are 2 Western Conference teams in the Spurs and the Rockets from the same division, at that matter, that are trying to earn their way into true contention status. And I have been impressed by what OKC has been able to do as of late, particularly with those 2 opponents. They weren't just wins, Steve. These were a pair of double-digit beatdowns, particularly in the second half of these games. It felt more like the Thunder that we got accustomed to earlier in the year. So before, I have lots of thoughts about what these last couple of games have been. But before we get there, you had them in the S tier, so I would assume no. But how concerned did you actually get during that weird stretch for OKC?
The thing is, I didn't. And so it was interesting because you've kind of been sprinkling a little bit of concern over the Thunder, like parsley. And I was just like, I think they're fine. Like, they're the top team in the league. They're 35-7, 20-2 at home, 15-4 on the road. There's no other team in the league with less than 5 road losses. You go to NBA.com, they're 5th in offensive rating, 1st in defensive rating. So when it was like, hey, let's talk Thunder, I'm like, what are we worried about? They're going to be just fine. And I think it kind of ties back into the ethos of this team and how Mark Daigneault has built them to kind of adapt and move on and move forward throughout the year. And then I'll tell you who's been less concerned than me, Chet Holmgren, because every time he says that, it's like, hey, can you guys relax? I think the quote from him post-game, he was asked about bouncing back with this winning streak. And Chet said, when you lose, everyone acts like the ceiling is caving in and the sky is falling, or sell the team. I don't think anybody is saying that, but that's what it feels like. But the most important part was the end. You can't lose sight of who you are, what you do, and how to do those things. And I feel like that's been the key for Oklahoma City during this run. Phoenix got them, Charlotte really got them, Utah almost got them, Memphis almost got them, and then we're back to business. And I think it just comes down to even the best teams, even the most known quantities, it comes down to navigating circumstances, the strength of the regular season, figuring out how to get back to what you're doing. I think that's what they showcased during this stretch.
I think that's one of the more fascinating, as you were talking about what Chet had to say, I think that's kind of been one of the more fascinating aspects of this Thunder team over the past few years. They are all very process driven. They're all relatively even keel. And I want to say odd. I don't mean it in a negative sense, but it's odd for a core that is as young as it is still to have that level of maturity and even keelness. You don't really feel them, even when they do lose. It's not necessarily, oh, Shai just jacked 7 straight shots, he's pressing. Jalen just jacked 7 straight shots, he's pressing. Or you don't really feel that. It's more they did not execute, or teams kind of got them, and they got to clean some things up. And so, even as I was sprinkling in my concerns with parsley, I did want to make sure I noted, hey, I do still feel like this is the title favorite, etc. But I am starting to see some things that are making me raise my brow. And so it has been, for me, encouraging to see not only have they bounced back, because you mentioned, Utah almost got them, Memphis almost got them. You face better competition, and it's 12-point win against Miami. It's a 21-point win against San Antonio Spurs, their first win over the Spurs this season. And then a 20-point win over the Rockets, which I didn't get to watch that game live, got to watch that super early this morning. And I'm watching the game, and I'm taking my notes and gathering things, and I'm just okay, I saw the box score. How does this end up being a 20-point game? In the third quarter, how did this end up being a 20-point game? And then the fourth quarter started. And I was like, oh.
So this is the thing, I'm glad you brought that up, that I've enjoyed about this particular 3-game stretch. It's about problem solving. It's about figuring things out. Not every game was perfect for them. And it's a reminder, for OKC, it's not about perfection, but they are such a sustainable team. And to beat them, you have to sustain on both ends. You go back to that Miami game, Miami comes out on fire attacking OKC's defense. They're getting drive kicked, they're hitting threes. OKC hangs around. Defense rises up. Shai drops 16 in the third, and off they go. Against the Spurs, it's back and forth. It's tense. It's contentious. Huge third quarter. Off they go. Against Houston, first quarter, muddy, right? Then they score 34 points in the second. They shoot 51%. They're up 7. We're feeling good. No, third quarter, you're shooting 38%, buddy. 2-point game again. And then fourth quarter, defense turns up. off they
Off they
go.
go.
And so that's just kind of been like the flow for the Thunder. It's been fun to kind of watch them navigate the stretch.
Yeah, it's been a good time. I want to circle back on the Thunder Spurs game in particular. I want to go there first because anytime you are 0-3 against an opponent, and as we both noted at this point across different platforms, you lost at home, you lost on the road, you lost at a neutral site. You just want to see, hey, like, did they need to, like, if they would have lost against the Spurs again, are they suddenly not title contenders anymore? Like, no, nobody should be in that case. But just from a pride standpoint, a mentality standpoint, like, if you're OKC, yeah, let's get one. Let's kind of put them back in their place. Let them know, like, congratulations on those. Like, we are still the top dogs. We still got some stuff. Now, no Devin Vassell for the Spurs, no Isaiah Hartenstein for the Thunder, no Lou Dort for the Thunder in that game as well. So, like, there are still some things where, like, I don't want to put hard stamps on things yet, these two. So we'll see if they end up meeting up in the playoffs later. But I was fascinated by the process on both ends of the floor for them. And so much of these matchups have been around the way Victor Wembanyama has been able to dictate terms. Defensively, walling off the rim, you can't get there. That kind of puts a hitch in OKC's half-court offense. Defensively, we are winning with all of the drives. And then there's also the Wemby portion. And as we now move into the middle of the floor, how much help can we send? Where can we send it? How quickly can we send it? The Spurs playing off of that. And so with the Thunder offense first, and this bounces off of the awesome breakdown that you did on our most recent episode of the Dunker Spot, Steve, about how the Spurs have been intentional about keeping Victor Wembanyama low on the floor. There's going to be a lot of off-ball communication. If you try to cut through, I'm not falling for it. If I am on the wing, I'm switching places with a teammate so I can stay low, and I want to be able to wall off the paint. The Thunder, it felt like, had more intention early on about, one, who we're going to have in that corner with Wemby. Early in that game, it was a lot of Jalen Williams. There were a couple of possessions where it was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You had some Cason Wallace mixed in there as well. I think San Antonio will be okay with that, even though Cason can knock down corner threes. But it's like, okay, this is interesting. They're trying to tap these buttons a little bit, to Steve's point. And then we get a little bit later in the first quarter, and you start to see some of these drives. And it reminded me of the Christmas Day matchup, where early on in that game, okay, these drives from OKC, a little bit more volume. They're getting a little bit deeper in the paint. They're actually challenging Wemby. The problem in that Christmas Day matchup is that it did not sustain past the first quarter. And OKC was back in the mid-range 3-point. Those weren't falling. We're going to drive. There's Wemby. I'm not even looking at the rim anymore. We're going to keep it going that way. They were able to sustain a little bit more in this game overall. But as you got into some of those drives, like I remember there was one pick and roll on the left side of the floor, immediate attack, Wemby drops down, I'm going to protect the paint, and then here's a cut from the white wing from Jalen Williams, and he gets a basket. I'm just like, oh, I like that. I like that they're starting to mix in more of these cuts. And even on one of the earlier possessions from there, like there was, I think, Cason Wallace in the corner, Wemby helps down, Cason cuts, comes back out. They exchange on the weak side. It's him and Jalen Williams. It ends up being a kick out to Cason Wallace for one of the corner threes they made in that game. I was like, okay, there's a little bit more intention from OKC's attack here. I love the way that this is starting to look. And you zoom out from that game, Steve, and I was looking at the previous Thunder Spurs matchups.
Mm-hmm.
In the first matchup, 10% of OKC shots came in the restricted area when Wemby was on the floor. Woefully low number. In the second matchup, that was down to 5.3%. Woefully low number. In the Christmas Day matchup, that was 10%. A little bit better, but still woefully low. 25% of their shots came in the restricted area in this most recent matchup. And like that's still a little bit low compared to where they want to be with all the drivers and attackers that they have. But the fact that they were intentional about how they wanted to move Wemby and they got that number basically almost tripled their rate from the last matchup was very encouraging to me.
Understood. And I guess part of my question would be, how do we feel about Oklahoma City's drives as a whole? Because we've kind of seen this offense shape shift over the course of the year and being able to run more pick and roll, being able to execute different things, guard screens, going second side. At times, do you feel like sometimes it's too quick shot territory? It's too reliant on the drives to break things down? Because there are times against Houston where it's like, hey, we have the personnel to keep this ball in front, and then we have the personnel to stay at home. And so it's hard to sustain because OKC's committed to driving. But how do you feel about that balance when they are kind of in the half court, trying to kind of early in the clock, where it's like, okay, we don't have Isaiah Hartenstein, so it's not like we're going to automatically go to handoffs and pick and roll. We're going to try and get an advantage, get a matchup, drive and kick, get some cuts around it, and play off that. How do you feel about that balance during that stretch? Because it's something that's been in my gut but
Mhm.
I don't necessarily know if it's an issue.
No, like, I think that was what I was initially gonna bring up. Like, I wonder how much of this has been, we don't have Isaiah Hartenstein as kind of the traffic cop in the middle of possessions if we don't have something. Or with just him kicking things off above the break with handoffs and things. And so it has felt a little drive and kick reliant. I think that also speaks to, I guess, like an old thought for OKC, like, hey, they probably could use another shooter or like a true movement shooter to where you have a little bit more variety. So it's not just drive and kick, it's not just pick and roll, which parlays into drive and kick. And it's not just the handoff stuff for Hartenstein, and now you don't have them. So that kind of puts a dent in that as well. Like, I do wonder if they get to a point, and it's not like they literally never do it, but I do wonder if they get to a point to where they start sprinkling in like some Shai elbow catches just to kind of add a little variety there. He won't be like, obviously him and Isaiah Hartenstein are totally different players, but like, do you get him some of those to try to manufacture some cutting around him, or at the very least, you can't load up in the same way because now we have Shai in this spot. Like, it's not like he doesn't have the post game for it. So that's another thought bubble that I've had in relation to that. But yeah, like, I think it's very much trying to figure out, we don't have Hartenstein. There are still players in our rotation, however good they are, that teams are comfortable helping off of. How can we counter this? Can we play a little bit faster so you don't have time to set up? And then can we introduce more of the cutting to kind of counter some of the help that you're showing? So like, I'm with you that it's like kind of pop for me, but like, a lot of this is they could probably use another shooter anyway. And Isaiah Hartenstein, he shouldn't be an underrated portion of the program at this point. You should know how important he is to this offense. But I think you have, even during these wins, you've kind of felt some of those pockets where like, ooh, they did usually have another guy that could get them to the second side and add a level of variety, and they don't have that right now.
But I think that kind of speaks to who OKC has become as a team, to be able to find different ways to get back to still having a level of flow. Like, it's not like they're automatically stuck in the mud. They have a conviction they play with offensively that I think's been impressive, and being able to use different pressure points and being able to use continuity between their lineups. So it doesn't matter who's in the lineup. AJ Mitchell, Aaron Wiggins, everyone knows what their task is. Everyone knows how they can attack. And they're always kind of keeping and finding different ways to keep pressure on you. So you think it's a guard screen. They swing to the second side real quick. Now, are you ready to close out? Are you ready for the second attack? And so I think for me, it's more about just tempo for them. Get to the next action, get to the next drive, continue to play out of things. When they kind of struggle a little bit, I think it's early screen, quick attack, quick shot. That doesn't, I like that for them as far as the aggression, but at the same time, are you punishing teams as much as you could is a question I end up asking myself.
Okay. No, that's fair. And I think this isn't necessarily a new point for you. Like, even heading into the eventual title win for OKC last year, you've consistently said this is an incredibly good basketball team because duh. But if you are trying to get the Thunder, get them into quick shot land, and that gives you the opportunity to run against them before they can set their ferocious defense, you can kind of go that way. So like, I think this is a very consistent point that you brought up, and I think it's a fair one. And it's been interesting to watch OKC kind of work through that again as they deal with the Isaiah Hartenstein injury. So I like that from you, Steve. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna go ahead because I had a question about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander offensively before we transition to the defensive side. But I'm curious as to what you were going to say.
Oh, well, actually, we can hang there with the offense since we're kind of here. What was your Shai question? Because I also have a lot of Shai thoughts about not just the Spurs game, but this run overall.
I mean, for me, it's something that just kind of popped in the Houston game, where Houston, who, they have double big lineups, they have size, they have length. It would probably seem like, hey, they're a switch team against, Shai and the Thunder. But they were a little bit more active in pick and roll. And I was going to ask you, how did you feel about, hey, high pick and roll with Shai? No, we're just going to trap that, and we're going to rotate behind it. And OKC, you have to figure out a way to find the openings, and we're going to trust that we can rotate behind it and get you into a different position. And a little bit of consistency, because they mixed it in. And it's hard because you have to try and show different things to Shai, and it's not like it's a new thing for Shai to see, but does it have a different weight against some of the taller teams, some of the better teams in the Western Conference? Does it contain something that could open things up? Because, and this could just be because Hartenstein's not out there, but, is that something you can go to? The problem is when you show Shai that, he kind of knows, and he got to rejects in the second half and decided, actually, I'm not going to come off that screen. And I'm going to actually just make a quick decision when you put two on the ball, and I'm going to accept this keep driving, advance it, and now we're gonna take advantage of what we have.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you think that's something that more teams should go to, or do you think it's something that isn't really viable?
I like it. It's the age old. How much of this is this team's personnel versus a template that you can use elsewhere. I love that this has become a theme of our Thunder conversations. I would say I was intrigued by Houston being as aggressive. And like quickly on that front, I'm glad you went there because I had this in my notes. Shai saw 2 on the ball on about 47% of his pick and rolls against Houston on Thursday night. Easily the highest rate that he has seen in a game this season. And like you consider some of the teams that they played, and it's like, oh, well, they are facing some teams that naturally have their bigs at the level and want to get aggressive anyway. So the fact that Houston of all teams was the one to kind of ramp it up against them was very interesting to me. And it felt like a direct foil to, they sprinkled it in the season opener. So like it's not new in this matchup, but to this volume, I was like, oh, this is a lot. And so like, I don't know how many teams can afford to be that aggressive that consistently against OKC. Like I do think it's a fair gambit in general when you think about some of the lineups that OKC puts out there and some of the shooters that are going to be out there. Like if it's 2 on the ball against Shai, early relief pass to Jalen Williams, and then the ball swings to Lu Dort, who again has shot well from 3 over the past 2 or 3 seasons, not so much this year. I think defenses are still in the mind like if Lu Dort makes 6 threes, then we're just going to lose to Lu Dort making 6 threes. And it's a similar deal with Case and Wallace. Not so much the case with AJ Mitchell, but you get what I'm saying. Like they have enough role players to where teams can, yes, we can afford to be a little bit more aggressive than we are accustomed to with some of the lines that OKC puts out. 47%, like that, I don't think you can do that. I don't think you do that. And like this is a middling defense as of late for Houston. We should probably have another conversation maybe next week or so about what's been happening with Houston the last few weeks.
A tease.
So you got that. But like overall this year and just throughout the Ime Udoka tenure, they have been an elite defense. And even with them, I'm like, I don't know if you want to do it this often. But to that point, Steve, it was interesting to watch Shai work through that. Because you mentioned some of the rejects in the second half. Going back to that first game, they hit Shai with those traps, and here's a turnover. With Alvin Thompson kind of challenging the pass, Shai double clutches one. It goes the other way. Another high pick and roll on the left side of the floor. Shai gets 2 on the ball. Quick hands from, I think, Reed Shepherd, and then that's going the other way. It's like, oh, okay. And so, watching that game this morning, that's where I thought, oh, they're just going to sprinkle it in and then go back to like switching or just start back mixing coverages. I wasn't anticipating it being as consistent as it was. But as we get there, that's where you get to, as I mentioned earlier, oh, you're sending 2 on the ball. I don't have to hit, Jalen Williams or Chad or whoever screening for me early. I can just hit this guy on the wing and then let them make the decision. And so like they were able to create in that first quarter in particular, they were able to generate some really good looks there, a couple of missed threes. And so you look at the overall like points per possession number Shai had in those looks, it's probably lower than you would anticipate, but that's because we generated a high quality shot. It just missed. So that's just a 0 in the spreadsheet type beat. But like he started getting more comfortable with that. He did start hitting the roller on some of those. That created some 2-on-1 opportunities getting downhill. And then to your point, Steve, now it's reject time. I know you're trying to get a guy up here. I'm going the other way. And this also kind of ties into my general Shai observation. And it also popped in the Spurs game as well for going back. Shai is just operating, at least to me, and I'd be curious if anyone like OKC media can like ask him this at some point. It feels like to me he has like sped up his internal clock. Because I think the fun thing with Shai overall is the cadence that he plays with. Gonna lull you to sleep with some of these dribbles. You don't know when I'm going to cross over. You don't know when I'm going to step back. And then once he actually gets into his gather, you don't know how quick that's going to be. When he pulls the ball up, this may be 1 pump fake. It may be 2 pump fakes. It may be 2 pump fakes and then a pivot another way. And then he's going into a shot. As of late, it's very much been whatever Shai's move is, I am going immediately into my shot. It was one of the things that I noted early on in that Spurs game where Stephon Castle did one heck of a job guarding him early. And I'd say overall, he did a really good job of staying in front of him.
Not in the opinion of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
That is true. But I'm saying, like, Stephon mirrored him well. He bodied him up. And I think very early on, Shai decided, like, oh, okay, I've seen Stephon multiple times at this point. I don't know if I can get into the fake bag like that. Like, I don't think he's going to be biting on those. I just got to get to whatever I feel like my spot is on this possession and just go rise up. Because ultimately, they're not going to block my shot. If I could get their angle on them, like, it's just up to me to make the shot. And so that really popped in that Spurs game. And overall, it's just been a lot of, this is the matchup, this is the coverage. I am getting to the elbow, I am rising. I am dribbling to my left, I'm going to my step back, I am rising immediately. Step back three, I'm just going immediately. And like, it's been fun to kind of watch that, because I know as a defender, Shai is difficult enough to deal with in and of itself. If he's now just streamlining his attacks to this degree, then it's like, well, shoot, how aggressive do I need to be now? And you know, the second you decide I need to ramp this up, I need to be more jumpy because he is now playing a little faster than we've gotten used to, the pump fakes are going to be right back. And he's going to be getting right back to the line. He's still getting into the line, but like he's going to be right back to the line on like some of the non-shooting fouls and stuff like that. And so the cat and mouse game that he's playing with defenders has been a joy for me. And again, popped in the Spurs matchup, popped in that Rockets matchup, to the point about dealing with those traps. You saw it in the Miami matchup. You mentioned the 16 in the third quarter. He has just been very good during the stretch. I think it's over 30 points a game still. The 20-point streak still remains for him. Had exactly 20, I believe, against Houston on Thursday. But I've enjoyed that part of the Shai process.
I'm glad you have. And I would like to talk about the one thing I always enjoy about the Oklahoma City Thunder, Nekias, and that is the defense.
Let's go.
And I think the biggest thing defensively, we know about the effort that they play with. We know about the physicality, but they can shapeshift at times and just disrupt your flow. And they just play with an activity about them. You know, ball pressure on a catch. And when you get to pick and roll, they work to navigate screens. The big might be at the level and might decide to trap. And all of a sudden, now you're trying to figure out where to go now. The ability to switch. You're seeing Thunder jerseys in the paint. You work to get movement on the second side of the floor. Another switch. Now you get to pick and roll. You're thinking, okay, they trapped me. No, I'm up here, but I'm dropping back. And now we're going to use our personnel to navigate this screen and kind of work to keep you in front. Openings are there against Oklahoma City, but they close in a split second. So it looks like you have a driving lane. It looks like you may have a kick out. But they're helping, they're recovering, they're getting back, and now we're just going to navigate. And, you know, it's not just one look that you're going to end up seeing. You want to end up attacking Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, something you brought up, right? You want to put him in action against Houston. Okay, he's guarding Kevin Durant, or he's guarding Alperen Sengun. Well, here's a double team. And on top of that, here's us showing bodies and helping, and we're going to dig on the move, and we'll figure it out. So that puts you in a position where how often are you going to go back to that after a few attempts? When do you go after him? Is it the start of the game or the end of the game? And then they have this really, hey, you have a really good player over there? Here's Alex Caruso. So what does that turn into? Does that player still initiate? Does the ball pressure make you slower? Do things slow down off ball because of his efforts? Are you ready for the physicality? He's going to put his paws on you, and he's going to do it in a way that the rest, A, can't see because he's going to show his hands right after, and B, he's not going to stop.
He is not going to stop it.
So the way that they can just kind of throw different things at you to, oh, you think you found something, we're just going to tweak it a little bit. And then it's like, hey, cool, here's Jalen Williams as well. Just throw that out there for you. So it's a reminder that there's pressure on offenses to find a way to sustain against OKC, which is difficult to deal with.
No, I think that's fair. And like quickly to the Houston game, you know, I've said this before with second spectrum, like what's a post up versus what's an isolation can get kind of muddy sometimes, just with how that's just general tracking data type beat. But per second spectrum in that Houston game, 13 post possessions for Houston, 0.17 points per possession on post touches in that game against OKC. What do you mean? It's almost literally zero. They did not have a good time. Alperen Sengun did not have a good time. But like naturally, there's grace. One, OKC is really good. Two, Sengun is what, 2 games back into his return. So like you obviously just give a little bit of grace there. But yeah, to your point, like the swarming, the way they're able to cross match, the help they're able to show, it's all been fun. Like that brings me back, you know, annoyingly so for some, I apologize. But that brings me back to that Spurs game, Steve. And it brings me back to the Wembanyama matchup. As I talked a little bit earlier about him being in the middle of the floor and what that conveys, just the general attention that he draws. We get to the very first possession of that game on Tuesday, and it's like a variation of double drag or a double pick and roll, and OKC botches it immediately. I'm just like, there's no way we're doing this again. I immediately had Charlotte flashbacks. I was like, there's no way that this is what it's going to be. But they cleaned it up. And boy, did they clean it up. And I think with what they did with Victor Wembanyama in that game, they maintain kind of like their matchup principles. We're going to have smaller guys on him. There was a handful of possessions where Chet got the matchup. There was the very early dunk, and I was like, oh boy, that's kind of tough. But like even within that possession and the overall theme of that game for me, with the Wemby touches in the middle or just his drives in general, OKC had their help, but it felt like the help was coming a little bit later. Like I appreciated anytime Wemby was starting his gather, here comes a swipe. There may be multiple players sinking in. If you're in the strong side corner, I don't care. I'm helping off of you, Harrison Barnes. It does not matter. We're making sure Wemby is not comfortable. And this kind of goes back to something that you said a little bit earlier this year about Wemby. As good as he is, like he is still working to tighten the handle. I think you can still poke at things when it comes to things like that. But like you see that physicality when Caruso gets the matchup or Jalen Williams gets the matchup or Kenrich Williams gets the matchup. We're digging under you. We're pushing your catches out. If you're trying to set up a post up, we have this layer of help behind you. You're not going to have a good time. And the second he gathers, here's multiple bodies. Can you make live dribble reads? Like I just felt like it was a very good job of disrupting him. And to that end, and I'll close it here. 37 touches for Wemby in that game against OKC. That's the third lowest number that he's had in the game this season. 0.73 points per possession on any trip featuring a Wemby touch, which was easily the lowest of the season. And he saw a second defender or a flat-out double team on nearly 30% of his touches. That was the highest mark that Wemby's seen this year. It was pristine stuff from OKC in that matchup. And again, it's a window into who they've been for most of the year. This is why they have the best defensive rating in basketball by a mile. But even in this particular matchup, like they can still do this to people. And so like as you brought up the defense, I was like, man, I had thoughts, wanted to get those out. It's been a lot of fun watching this group kind of find itself again.